Hi, everyone. Welcome back to How Did You Learn to Do That podcast. Thanks so much for coming back this week. And I hope that you've enjoyed our content so far and all the information and the guides and the interviews that we've done and the stories that we've shared. And I really do hope you have had a chance to head over to the blog to check out our blog posts as well as some of the information that we share on there and some of the journals and books that you can get started to read and get started on this journey to your purpose in life. I do also wanted to talk about the challenge that was last week. The challenge is still available, so if you want, you can join by signing up to our newsletter list. I will be creating some workshops as well as a course and a couple other things that are coming up, which is very exciting, and my people on the newsletter will be the first one to know about it. So please sign up, and don't forget that you do have to confirm your subscription in your email before you get those emails. All right, and if you have any other further questions, let me know. Also, don't forget that you can nominate somebody if you're interested to learn about how they learned to do something. Just send me a message, either on email, info@howdidyoulearntodothat.com, or you can just send me a message directly on Instagram. And with that, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share our social media accounts with your family and your friends, and to check us out on all the major podcast platforms as well as on YouTube. Okay, so today's episode, I'm going to actually talk. Last week, we talked about what it was like to become a mom and to adjust to becoming a parent. So this week, I just wanted to talk about what we learned from our own parents and how we need to take inventory of that and reflect upon that in our lives in order to stop any cycles that are not beneficial to us but are more harmful to us and are harmful for the generations that come, and then how to actually continue some of those things that are very helpful for us, and that was helpful for us, that was helpful for our parents from their parents, and it'll be helpful for us to pass along to our children in the future. All right, so I hope you get a pen and paper and start taking down some notes, because this is a very dear topic to me, near and dear topic to me, and I have a lot of experience in this. So I hope that you take some time to reflect and to take note of all the key things that we're going to share with you, and then take some time after the fact to do a little bit of homework and reflecting upon yourself. Okay, so first off, I'll talk about what do we mean by learning from our parents. So our parents it's essentially entrusted by society to teach us everything that we need to learn up until we're in school. And even in school, even though we're there full time, our parents really groom us until we're 5 or 6 years old and start kindergarten. But they do continue that cycle as we continue through school evenings and weekends and holidays and all of that. So it's very important that what we learn from our parents, we actually take inventory of. And some of us have had amazing childhoods where our parents have done a fabulous job, and we've just, we're one of the very few lucky people that have had parents that were able to actually take inventory of their own habits, their own thoughts, their own processes, their own traumas, and have actually worked through that in order to show up as the best version of themselves for us and allow us not to have to inherit those family traumas or those generational traumas, or those methods of coping and whatnot. But for the majority of us, our parents actually do pass on, and we do inherit some of those things that we don't want necessarily to inherit. So when I say that, I mean sometimes our parents, they go through their own set of traumas. And you have to remember, this is cyclical and this is generational, because things that come down from generation to generation to generation are often not stopped. The cycle is often continued until somebody along the way decides that, no, I'm no longer going to live like this. I don't think coping like this, or I don't think acting like this, or I don't think speaking like this, or thinking like this is actually conducive and positive to me and in growing my life. So I'm actually going to stop. I'm no longer going to do that, and I'm going to grow and understand what skills I need in my life in order to be a better version of myself. and not continue that cycle that, probably has not worked for me. So when that person stops, that's where the cycle stops in that generation and in that family, and a new one starts, and hopefully a better one. And so when we're talking about, so when I talk about that, I mean, in essence, just in essence, what I think is, actually, I'll get to that in just a minute, but I'll back up a little bit. What I actually want you to do, right now, and you can pause this podcast and do it and then come back to it. What I want you to do right now is I want you to take out a piece of paper. It could be in your journal. It could just be a loose leaf piece of paper. It really doesn't matter. But what I want you to do is I want you to write down at the top of it, mom, dad, you know, I know some of us don't actually know our dads, or maybe our moms, or don't have that close relationship, but I still want you to write it down because it may be important for you to just to dig through. So write mom and dad. And then on the mom side, I want you to write down all the way your mom deals with things that are positive. Actually, why don't you write down 2 columns, good and positive and negative. So all the things that your mom does that's positive. So whether that's being able to cope, being resilient, being able to explain a situation easily, or the ability not to be overwhelmed and stressed, or be able to cope with a high level of stress, or using words to explain herself and her feelings, being able to be using appropriate actions in order to address situations, or, being there for you emotionally, being there for you mentally or physically, um, or overcoming some fears, or not allowing fear to stop your mom. And this also goes for your dad as well, not allowing things to stop that. Or are there things in their lives that are non-negotiables for them? Is it eating healthy, exercising, working on a hobby of theirs, like working on cars, or other things? What are some hobbies that are non-negotiable for them, that really allows them to address their own mental health? And if there really is nothing that you think your parents are doing to address their mental health, their emotional health, and their physical health, and their spiritual health, then I would actually write that down. I'd write that down maybe in the negative column. And then I want you to think of all the things that, you've been through with your parents, and all the things that you kind of don't understand. If, for example, your parents get a bill that's much higher than expected, how do they actually react to that? Is that, in a negative sense, they may get overwhelmed, they may get stressed, it might spiral into emotional eating, for example, or if they smoke cigarettes, they may smoke more cigarettes than usual. If there's a substance use issue there, then they would increase their substance use. What is it? And does that affect their emotions? Does it affect their behavior for the day, or a couple of days there? Does that impact how you react and interact with your parents? Does that affect how other people interact with your parents? Do you feel like you have to kind of, when they're in that state of being overwhelmed and just not able to cope, are you the one that's kind of becoming the parent, and trying to help assess the situation, and walking on eggshells to make sure that it doesn't get worse, or trying to fix the problem? you know just write that all down, because I want you to figure that out. And even though I want you to think deeper. I want you to think not only about their emotional abilities, but their mental abilities, so their physical abilities, their spiritual abilities. Do they try to become a better version of themselves regularly? Have they committed to themselves regularly or not? Do they have health concerns that you know about? Do they have a great support system around them? So when I say support system, I do mean their partner. That may be your dad, maybe your stepdad or stepmom, or a boyfriend, a girlfriend, a group of friends around them, a good family support system around them. I don't want you to include yourself as a support, and if you realize that you are the only support for your parents, I want you to write that down, actually. Take note of that. And you can decide if that's positive or negative. That really depends on your relationship and how you feel about that. But keep in mind that if you were not in the picture, how do you think your parents would cope? And I'll use myself as an example. As there was things that I knew that I didn't want from my parents before I had a child. But once I had Amelia, I really, really realized the things I did not want. But also, in the same token, I became very empathetic to my parents because I saw that cycle and I saw that it wasn't their fault that they were the way they were. It just happened generally because that's how what was passed down to them. So for me, some things that, I think I don't want to have is, and I have to say that this is actually before, this is not now. So about 6 years ago, I would say that I did not want my mom's coping skills because I thought she could not cope. She got way too overwhelmed, way too stressed out, and she just couldn't move forward. It just consumed her for so many days. And the other thing I didn't want from both my parents actually is stubbornness. I didn't want their stubbornness and their egos because even though they are very successful for having to restart their whole lives because we are refugees, I think they also, in the same token, have become pretty stubborn in the sense that they think that they know what's best. And sometimes they don't listen to other people. They don't listen to advice from other folks or myself. And they just, that kind of does blind them a bit and does get in the way of their life. So those are the things that I really don't want. And the biggest thing I'll say is also the um, skill of empathy. I think that's definitely a skill to have to be an empath and to be empathetic, because it is hard to put yourself in someone else's shoes and actually truly empathize with them. I'm not talking about sympathizing, which is different. Empathizing is actually understanding and putting yourself in their shoes to really assess the situation and know how you feel about how you would feel if you were in that situation. And it's really, really empathizing with that person, not necessarily feeling bad for them. But yeah, I think that there's definitely some level of empathy that could be happening there, as well as just being out there with your love and saying I love you, and being affectionate and not having to be, kind of closed off. I feel like it's a big one that I wanted to pass down to my children. I want my kids to always know that I love them by me actually physically expressing it and emotionally expressing it, and everything, my whole being would express that. And I'm not saying my parents didn't express it. They have told me that they love me, and they do, hug me and kiss me and cherish me, but it's not as frequent as I would like it to be. Um, Especially with, checking in and things like that, like phone calls and all that. I feel like sometimes it's we're all a bit independent, so we don't do that as frequently. And I know of people that say that they talk to their parents every single day. The parents check in every single day, and I feel like my parents, they value independence, so they've raised us like that, and they give me my independence. But once in a while, I do wish they would call me too, regularly. It would be nice to have a relationship with them every single day. So once you've written down that list, just keep note of it, and then I want you to come back to the podcast. So you can stop here actually and go ahead and write your list. So now that you've written your list, let's think about what we see on the paper. So take a minute to just review what you have written down. If you need a minute actually before you move to this next step, if you need some time to just relax, unwind, or if you actually want to pause this for today because it's too much for you right now, because I don't know, you may have expressed some traumas you've experienced, or some challenges, and it may be emotionally taxing on you. So if you need to take a break today and you want to come back tomorrow, that's absolutely fine. Just make note of where you stopped and come back tomorrow. And just make sure you take some time to have a bath, have a nice cup of coffee or tea, treat yourself, go for a walk, unwind, just relax. Just take some time to take some deep breaths and unwind. But for those of you that want to continue, so let's look at what you've decided that you've identified in your parents, positively and negatively. Now, I want you to do the same thing, make the same list, positive, negative, and I want you to write your name at the top. And I want you to write down what of those traits from your parents have you adopted? And this actually may be a great opportunity for you to talk to a close friend or a partner of yours or one of your siblings. And I want you to actually be vulnerable. Don't be defensive. I know I talk about this in the How to Shift Your Mindset post that I did a couple of weeks ago, but I will reiterate it here. Don't be defensive. Let your family and your friends actually be honest with you and allow them to do that, because it's the only way you're going to learn what you've adapted from your parents and adopted from your parents, and how to grow as a person, how to actually stop the cycle. So you need to be vulnerable. Don't get defensive. You may or may not agree with it, but sometimes other people see things in us that we don't see in ourselves. And it's important to always do these check-ins. So write down all the things that you've noticed that you say your parents have, positive or negative, and write down what you have. And then check in with a sibling, a partner, or anybody else that knows you very, very well, and ask them what you think that you've adapted from your parents. And make sure that whoever you're asking, they actually know your parents, because that's the only way this would make sense, which is why I say a sibling is probably the best if you can, or your partner, because they would know your parents well too, if they've been around for a long time. And yeah, and so then once you have that list, then take a look at it. Take a look at the positive side. So obviously, when you adopt positive things from your parents, that's great. It's great news. But just, I want you to take a minute to look at the list that you've created and just make sure that all of those things that are positive that you've adopted and that you exhibit, that probably came from your parents, just take a look and make sure that that's stuff that makes you happy. Is that stuff that you feel happy about? Is that stuff that you think is going to bring you more joy in the future? And if so, great. But then there may be some things that you realize, although this is good, it's actually getting in the way of you growing, the life that you want to have, creating that life, or even pursuing your purpose in life. So, for example, what I'll say is, let's say, let me try to think of what is a skill that's positive that I would say my mom's independence is a very, very positive trait that she has. She's able to do everything and anything on her own. She never asks for help from any of us. And that's something that I definitely have adopted. I love to be independent. I love to do my own thing. I don't really ask for help. But where I noticed the difference is that my mom is so independent that she would rather do something the hard way or not do it, and not create that self for herself, because it would make her life so much easier, because she doesn't want to ask for help. So her independence is only so good until it's not. So it's good to a fault. My independence, what I've decided is that I'm not going to be as stubborn as my mom in my independence. I am going to be independent. I'm going to do as much as I can on my own, which is great. But when I need some help, I'm not going to be shy to ask for it. I'm not going to be, so stuck in my independence that I will not ask for help. And that's kind of the difference that I want you to analyze for yourself. What do your parents have that's positive that you've also adopted? But just check to see at what point does that become less conducive to you. It inhibits your ability to move forward in your life and to grow as a person. And can you actually change that a little bit to tweak it so it's better for you? And yeah, so that's the biggest thing that I would say for that piece of it. And then the negative side of things, it will take a bit more time. So for the negative piece, what I want you to do is I want you to look at, okay, what are all the things that your parents are doing that you don't agree with? What are all the things that whoever you inquired with has said that you have started to exhibit as well, or that you've noticed you've exhibited? And what in those areas can you actually start to change? taking inventory of this and actually self-reflecting, which I'm a huge proponent of, self-reflecting regularly every single day is so, so important. And it's important that you keep doing that. And so the only way you'll learn these things and you'll start understanding these things is if you do self-reflect every day. So like I said, I do affiliate for a program called Morning Ritual Mastery. I will link it on my Instagram links, but also on the blog podcast show notes for you to check out. It's honestly a great program, and I highly recommend starting your day slower, reflecting and understanding what you want in life, and really putting into action some of these things that we're going to learn in this episode for you. So going back to the negative things. So take a look at all the things that you've adapted, you know, ask yourself why. And I always say to ask yourself why, because you need to know, why do you have these skills? What, you know, stops you from actually being more positive in this area. And obviously one of the whys is that this is something that was modeled for you growing up and as a child. And that's why you actually exhibit this behavior, or you think this way, or you process information this way, or your feelings and whatnot. But other than that, what else is there that's actually stopping you from growing? So if we take, for example, the coping. So if, I felt that, actually, let's actually take something that I have taken from my parents. Something that I've taken from my parents is my my okay, one of the things that I've taken from my parents is my lack of expressing myself and being emotionally available for people. Not emotionally available, actually, that's not the best way to describe it, but being expressive with how much people mean to me and how much I love people that are closest to me, right? So that's something that my parents, even though I knew they loved me, even though there was, here and there they would say that and they would hug me and express that to me, it wasn't so frequent, and I didn't feel it in the actions sometimes that they were doing, or not doing, right? Like I said, checking in with me and things like that. So for me, for those closest to me, I realized that I also was kind of not always like texting or calling my closest friends and family, checking in with them, stuff like that, because I just was like, what's the point? you know but I've made it a concerted effort now that I am going to emotionally express that I care about people, that I love them, by checking in with them, by calling them regularly, by saying hi, how's it going, even if I have nothing else to say. Because no, if you actually think about it, I used to think, for example, that I was wasting people's time. But if you actually think about it, how many phone calls do you receive from a friend or family member that, that where they only say, how are you? I am thinking of you. How are you doing? How many of those have you received in the last week? If you really think about it, we don't receive those phone calls anymore because we're so reliant on text. We see what people are doing on Facebook and Instagram. We're actually not feeling like we need to call and check in with them to see what they're up to, because it's all social media. So what's the point there, right? Wrong. We need that point of connection with people. We need that point where we are doing personalized phone calls to people, or texts even, and just saying like, hi, I'm thinking of you. How are you? Just something so simple, because we all are feeling more disconnected. Even though we live in a more connected world, we're feeling more disconnected and lonelier. So you're not wasting anybody's time. And that's the biggest shift that you need to make in your head. And that's actually something that's a common, I am wasting someone's time, or I'm bothering them. That's actually a comment that I, got from my mom. So my mom, even though she wants to call people, or she wants to hang out, or she wants to do this or that, she won't call. She won't message, because she doesn't want to bother people. She doesn't want to be a nuisance to people. So growing up hearing that, I adopted the same line of thinking. And that's what I learned from my mom. But I've taken the onus to say, no, that's not true. I've decided to shift my mindset around that, shift the language that I'm using around that, and actually action it by calling and texting people that I care about and checking in on them and seeing how they're doing. And that's something that I want my daughter to see, is that, we all have time to check in with at least one person every day or every couple of days, at least 3 people a week, just saying, hey, how are you? I'm thinking of you. And when you create that environment, you'll notice that people will also call you back and ask you the same questions. And then you instantly just feel like you have this community of people that you love and they love you. Even if you don't have to say, I love you, you know it's there because you're calling each other and asking, hey, how's it going? So, that's an example of how you can take something negative and actually change the way you process and the way you think. And I would actually beside, if you can, I would actually, beside the column of negative, I would actually write actions. And in action, I want you to write what you think is the first step you can take to change that negative trait into a more positive one. What are some things you could do? So like I said, 2 to 3 calls to check in with somebody. Or if you feel stubborn, take an extra minute to listen to something before you decide no or yes, or, stick to what you want to stick to. If it's something else, like for example, if there's a lot of guilt and shame around things that you do, for example, a lot of guilt and shame around what you're eating, for example, take onus of that, and just understand, like, what is it that is making you feel that guilt and shame? Is it because that when you used to eat things, your parents used to say things to you, or their parents used to say things to them and they pass it on to you? Take a note of that and try to think, what are the kinds of things that you say to yourself that you can actually tweak and change to be more positive? And how do we change that language? And some of this stuff may actually be so entrenched and so deeply traumatizing, or there's a deep, deep wound in there that you can't really do this on your own sometimes. So I do highly recommend you visit a counselor in your area, a psychologist in your area, or a life coach. Counselors are great because they have the clinical knowledge. And it's great for kind of, that checkup every month or so. But a life coach is absolutely amazing because they actually are there with you every step of the way throughout life. And it's not just one 90-minute timeline. It's, in the trajectory of your life. It's almost like you can call them whenever. They're like a friend that can just help you. And if you really feel uncomfortable reaching out to any of those professionals, but you just want to talk, connect with me. Let me know. I'm happy to kind of set something up for you, and try to help you where I can. Okay, so that's what I would say would be the biggest 2 things for learning from our parents. And once you decide that, you're not going to continue that, and once you make a concerted effort to not do what your parents have done, I think is so, so important. And what I would actually recommend is I would actually recommend that you go back a couple podcasts, and I'm going to actually do a roundup of podcasts in a couple weeks, but I want you to actually go back to the beginning. I want you to watch the episode with Jackie around journaling. I want you to watch the episode that I did around, watch or listen actually, the episode around how to shift your mindset, how to self-reflect is another episode I want you to check out. And I really do want you to look at, those pieces, because those pieces really will help you to get deeper into why you want to stop the cycle, why you want to take what you've learned from your parents, and if it's negative, actually switch it into more of a positive stance. I think that's very, very important for you to do. And don't forget, creating yourself a morning ritual is really step 1, because it's great to have all those skills, but if you're not doing it every single day, it's almost hard to keep up with it, right? You have to be consistent, just like working out, just like eating healthy, you have to be consistent. So for the morning ritual, like I said, I highly recommend, if you don't understand how to have a morning ritual or kind of get started, I do recommend you purchase the morning ritual mastery course, and you actually go through that course and you check it out, because that'll actually help you have a step-by-step process in how a morning ritual works. There's some tips and tricks in there. And then you can basically, once you've got the hang of that, you can start to adapt it into whatever works for you, right? So you don't need to do all those steps all the time, but you can just make it what works best for you. As long as you're doing it consistently is key, and don't make it too overly complicated either. I will, like I said, offer some workshops on vision boarding, journaling, self-reflecting. And then the fourth one that I will, that's really, really popular, is around realizations and how to actually move forward once you've had a realization. So check out those on my newsletter list, and then I'll let you know when those are coming out. And you do have to sign up for the newsletter in order to get those and those workshops first, and then I'll release it publicly. So just to continue with this conversation about our parents and to also wrap it up a bit, I just wanted to talk about, share a story with you. So one of the biggest things that I had noticed when I had my daughter is that my mom always kind of doubted my ability to be a mom. She doubted my ability or my knowledge around being a mom. She kind of had no faith in me. She didn't know what I can and can't do. She felt like she needed to be on standby to parent my daughter before me because she didn't feel comfortable that I knew what I was doing. And in the first month, there was a lot of comments, a lot of doubt, a lot of stuff that I was kind of like, Mom, you got to stop. Like, I know what I'm doing. I don't need you to help me. I know exactly what I need to do. I'm her mom and I know what's best for her. After about a month, I remember it was Christmas time, and my mom sat down with my mother-in-law and said to her, I actually didn't think that she knew anything about being a mom, and I didn't think that she knew what she was doing, but she's actually doing such a good job, and I'm so, so proud of her. And I was upstairs at this point, but I heard her. And of course I got teary because I said, oh my gosh, right? That's amazing. My mom actually trusts me now, and she actually knows that I know what I'm doing, and she's proud of me. So I was really happy. And later on, I asked her, I said, Mom, I heard that comment. Why didn't you trust me beforehand? And she said, I don't really know. She's like, it's just that I was never trusted. When I first had you, people always said that the way I parented you guys and the level of freedom I gave you was going to, turn you into girls that kind of had no future, or that were overly spoiled, really weren't going to be successful in life, and just didn't know and what they were going to do. And I didn't know what I was doing, and that I wasn't going to raise you guys to be great women. But to the contrary, my mom's actually raised us to be the most successful ones of our family, to be the most independent, to be the most reliant, um, and to be the best of our entire family. And, when she looks back at her being raised and all the comments she received, she was proud that she never gave in to any of that she stuck to her guns and listened to her intuition and raised us the way she thought was the best. And now if you do go around in our family, and I'm not just tooting our own horn or my mom's horn, but, there is something to be said when you allow your child to lead their own life, and to allow, just follow your child's emotions and be there when you need to be there, but not micromanage. I think is the best way to raise a child. And that's exactly what my mom did. And she always said, we never had curfews growing up. We never had, um, any kind of set of rules we needed to follow or anything. But the only thing she said was that if we ever got in trouble, and we got in trouble actually many times, she said, you have to pay for the consequences, and I'm not going to bail you out because you have all the freedom in the world and you don't have to get in trouble. But if you do, it's on you. And that was true. Whenever I got into trouble or fault, I had to find my own way out of it, or I had to pay the consequences, pay the time or crime or whatever it was. It really wasn't always that bad, but, if we had to write a letter to apologize, or we had to, stay home, or we got our car taken away or whatever, we had to pay for it. It didn't matter what anybody else thought. And I think that's key. But there was definitely skills that she had that I didn't agree with, and I don't want to continue in my daughter as well. But I am raising my daughter being as cautious as possible, not to project anything on her. I have obviously dreams and wishes for her, but I don't want to project those onto her. I don't want her to be in a certain career. I don't want her to be dressing a certain way or having a certain look or eating a certain way or anything. I have none of those for my daughter, because those are all up to my daughter. It's her body, it's her life, it's her decision what she wants to do with her life. The only thing that I want for my daughter, and I hope that, I can, is that I want to raise my daughter to always be kind to everybody, because she can be kind to anything and everybody. And, it doesn't take a lot of effort or money to do that. And I want her to be independent. I want her to be able to solve problems herself. I want her to be able to know what she needs to do in order to get something that she wants in her life. I want her to be able to create whatever she wants in life for herself. And the last one is confidence. I want my daughter to have the confidence in her soul and in herself to know that she's the best that she can be. And it doesn't matter what she looks like. It doesn't matter what education she has. It doesn't matter what job she has. It doesn't matter what material things she has. It doesn't matter anything. Her, to the core and to her soul, should be confident. And that's what I want for her. And it may not be there right away, but if I could raise her that way, that would be the best. And that, a lot of that means that I have to let go of my own learnings that I've learned through childhood and to growing up. I have to release any kind of expectations I have of what society tells me is perfect or imperfect. I have to release all of that, because none of that I want to continue with my daughter, and all of that is being stopped with me, and that cycle is stopping with me. And spiritually, also, I want my daughter to pursue whatever spiritual path is best for her. I don't want to project any religion on her. I don't want to project my own any spirituality on her. I don't want to project anything on her. I want her to be herself and only herself. And so I hope that you've had the moment to really think through the things that your parents have done, and what they act upon and what they've projected upon you, and what they've had projected upon them. And I hope that not only do you start to realize that how you unconsciously adapted and adopted some of these skills and traits that your parents have had and continue to have probably into your own life and the way you present yourself to the world and the type of person that you are. And I hope that you're able to shift some of those negative things into more positive things and help to grow as a person and to stop that cycle with yourself, so you don't move it forward into your kids and then grandkids, and that cycle continues. But I also want you to actually take a moment once you've done this exercise and you've started moving through this, and whenever you're ready, I want you to just take some time to think back to all the arguments that you may have had with your parents, all the things that you say you don't agree with your parents or you don't like about them. And I want you to just forgive your parents for that, because once you realize that your parents have had these traits that you've taken on, you'll realize that those traits that your parents had are only traits that they took on from their parents. And it's none of our faults that we act the way that we act. It's none of our faults that we are the way we are. It's just the only fault that we have really is that we need to stop that cycle now, and we need to take a moment to reflect. And that is the only thing that I would say is key to this, is that you have the ability to change that trajectory. You have the ability to change that cycle, and I'll say it again. You have the ability to change the trajectory of your family and your generations to come. You have the ability to stop that cycle, and it stops with you. So I want you to forgive your parents, forgive your grandparents. And the best thing that I would say actually is, I need you to actually go, you should actually, I don't need you to. Whenever you're ready, I want you to go to your parents and I want you to sit down and you want you to show them this list and tell them, you don't want them to be defensive. You just want to share something that you're working on, and you hope they could support you and love you for it, and that you love them no matter what. I want you to show them all these things that you've done, that you've identified in them, in your parents, positive and negative, and things that you've identified in yourself, positive or negative, that's come from them. And then how you are taking concerted effort and action to actually stop that cycle and to be more of a positive person, to grow as a person as well. And the reason why I want you to do this is because at the end of this, end of showing your parents, what you've been doing, I want you to physically get up, give your parents a hug and say, Mom or Dad, I forgive you for every trait that you have that may not have positively impacted me and that may have negatively impacted me. And I'm sorry for not understanding you before. But now I understand you, and I understand that this is something that has come from generational trauma. This is something that's come from your parents and your parents' parents and your parents' parents' parents. But the cycle stops with me, and I'm not continuing this into my kids or my grandkids or my great grandkids. So I just want to take a moment to let you know this is what I'm doing, and I want to forgive you, and I want to thank you for your love and for your support while I'm on this journey. And you'll be so surprised how much your parents will welcome that, how much closer you'll actually get, and then you become their coach in a way. And that's exactly what I'm doing right now. I've had this conversation with my mom, and I've said, Mom, I'm sorry, for things that I didn't agree with you previously. I'm sorry for the way that you were raised and things that sometimes came down to you negatively and how they negatively impacted me as well. But here's what I'm doing, and here's what I think you should do. And here's the kind of language shifts I think you should do. And same with my mom, like I mentioned, I say to her all the time, I'm like, Mom, people are not bothered. People would welcome this. People are lonely. People want to connect. They want to love. They want to encourage. They want all of that. So reach out, make friends, make that community, create what you need to create for yourself. It's so, so important. And, it's actually getting through, and she's creating that for herself. So we're all on this trajectory. And I think it was Jackie that said that once you have a shine on yourself and once you're sparkling, everybody else around you will start sparkling as well. And they'll see how happy you are and how you're moving along in this journey, in this path to your purpose in life, and how they could too. All right, so I really hope that you enjoyed this episode. I hope that you take some time to do this exercise. And also, I just want to let you know, if you loved this exercise and you loved what we did here, that there will be more of this in the workshop that will be coming up soon in September, hopefully. And make sure you sign on to our newsletter list to be the first to know before we release it publicly. And there won't be a lot of spots. It will be limited because I can't do live workshops with everybody and give you that dedicated time and effort as well. All right, so with that, make sure you like, subscribe, and share our podcast on all your social media accounts, and to check us out on YouTube and subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. And with that, I'll say that, again, you have the ability to catalyze your life from ordinary to extraordinary, and it all starts with you. I'll see you guys next week. Bye.